that every day that we're designing buildings, we have the potential to be increasing that, right? Because we're adding buildings, and so thinking about the opportunity that we have every day as designers. Like I mentioned, the Architecture 2030 was created by Ed Mazria. He founded Architecture 2030 in 2002. And then the AIA actually adopted the goals of Architecture 2030 in 2009 to create the AIA 2030 commitment, which is sort of the formalized reporting process that we're talking about today. And really, the idea here being to look at trying to create a stair-stepped goal for all of us to strive towards as we're designing our buildings to reduce the energy and emissions of those buildings in order to get to zero by 2030. And so, starting with 60 and going down to 70, 80, 90, and ultimately, hopefully, to zero by 2030. With a set baseline based on the 2003 CBEX. The Architecture 2030 commitment, like I said, that's the part that is by the AIA that we're reporting to. That everyone here, I hope that if you're not already today, that you'll consider and talk to the leadership of your firm to become a signatory for the 2030 commitment. At TLC, we were one of the first MEP firms to become a signatory to the 2030 commitment because, we felt like that, this was important to also be in support and work with our architectural partners to support driving down the energy use and emissions, as well as tracking and reporting that data. One of the first things to do to get started is to create a sustainability action plan, and then look for projects that you could start. I know a lot of folks say that, well, how could we do this with all of our projects, and that from the very beginning you can look at it as just dipping your toe in the first year, trying to report more projects the next year. Don't let trying to do all or nothing be a barrier for you there. And then for this reporting year that we're working on now, completing for 2025, will be TLC's 14th year reporting here. As you can see our reporting label there. So over the years, the 2030 commitment has had steady increases in both membership and reporting. So you can see starting in reporting year 10, 135 firms reporting all the way up to 1,400 firms that are signatories. Now you will notice the difference here between signatories and firms that are reporting. Really, a little less than a third of firms that are assigned signatories are reporting there. And some of that is changes over the years, consolidations, changes in leadership. But really, we'd like to continue to see that number go up and to, strive towards having a much higher percentage of our signatories reporting year over year and to really continue to be involved with the program. As far as the performance of it goes, in reporting year 2024, we had over 4 billion gross square foot of building area reported at an average 56% reduction in PEUI there. And so you can kind of see the trend of PEUI in green across this chart. And while we have seen steady increases year over year, it is, stagnating a little bit. And so that's something that the Architecture 2030 and the National 2030 Working Group, we're looking at what we can do to help firms continue to push that up. And what are the real drivers there. But once again, really great continued growth within the program year over year. A few myths and facts, right, that we run into all the time is that, it takes too much time. There's too many resources. There's no way that, we can do this. Like I mentioned before, that, how in the world can we do all these projects, right? As I'm going to show you here in an example going forward, that it really doesn't take that long to report a project or create it. The program's free, and especially for small firms that see being a barrier that they're not big enough and don't have enough resources. the great thing about being part of the 2030 commitment is access and use of the DDX. This is a free tool that you can use to collect your project data and to compare how you're doing. You don't have to have firm resources to build your own tool. There's this great tool out there for you to use. So I personally think that that's a really great asset and reason, if any, to be part of the program. But all the data is anonymous. You don't have to worry about any sharing as far as that goes. And making progress, like I said, year over year, reporting more projects, tracking, using it as a process improvement to look at how you can make your project better is the real goal. So don't let that all my projects aren't net zero. I can't do all my projects and get them entered. Don't let that be a barrier. Just try to continue to improve. Okay, so the 2030 DDX, like I said, it's a free platform, it's a free tool that you get access to. You can go and create an account at 2030ddx.aia.org. So let's jump in. Let's see how quickly and how easily you could report a project. There's a few different ways. Direct data inputs, what I'm going to show you today, but for larger firms, there are ways you can do bulk data upload, like if you have your own system that you want to be able to just upload a spreadsheet. There is a way to do that as well as direct API connection for certain softwares. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you log in. You can see my firm profile here. We're on the company page, and we're just going to go and click Create Project here. Then there's 3 steps here of basic project information. I've highlighted the items that are required. You may immediately say, hey, that looks like a lot of stuff. It's really not. A bunch of these are things that you know, right? And the great thing about it is you can go back and change any of them. So these are not set in stone. You're not stuck with it. You can absolutely go back and fix it. And really, the biggest thing here is setting your postal code, because that's what's used for deciding part of your baseline, right? And then once again, though, you can go back and adjust it. Try to get close. You set a project name. Is it active? Is it a whole building? Is it new construction? Is it renovation? And then the location. Climate zone populates for you. IP or SI units. So pretty quick, pretty simple. Don't let any of these get in your way. If when in doubt, guess something close, you can come back and adjust it. All right. The step 2, a little less information. Some of it may be a little bit more intimidating, right? Like, what's the estimated occupancy year? I run into this all the time, and I'm like, oh, where's the schedule? I don't remember. Pick a year. This doesn't really reflect your reporting at all. It doesn't reflect your reporting year. This is really an AIA data collection for the purposes of by the numbers and all that. So it doesn't affect your baseline, doesn't affect any of that. So guess, come back, verify, fix it. But again, don't let it hold you up. Energy code used. So this is, again, if you're not sure, pick something close. Ask the rest of your team and then come back to it. This really only is going to affect what you report if you're doing code equivalent reporting, right? So it does affect that percent savings if you don't have an energy model or it's an interiors project. But otherwise, again, it's a comparison metric. So again, don't let it stop you. But then, starting to get into the important stuff, right? What type of building is it? Is it an office? Is it a university classroom? Is it a hospital? And you can break this down into multiple building space types. If you've say got multi-use. And then what's the size of the project? Again, this goes towards figuring out your zero tool baseline. Like I mentioned earlier, the baseline doesn't change year over year. It's set as 2003 CBEX. Then it'll populate your baseline for you. And you can also put in a custom one that I'll talk about later in my case study. And then give you some metrics that you can use to compare. This is where you want to work with your team and talk about doing goal setting. What do you think you can achieve for this project? And then once you've done that, your project's set up. You have your dashboard. You can see this quick at a glance what's your baseline, what's your target, and then click track data. This is where you're actually reporting the project. So set your reporting phase, set your reporting year. So like for right now, we're all working on our 2025 reporting year that will all get done by the end of March 26. It's kind of like your taxes like that. And then if you have an energy model with energy use, we're going to click yes here to open that up to put in the predicted energy use. If you're just going to do code equivalent reporting, which means that the savings for your building is going to be based on the code equivalent savings for the energy code you chose, you're already done. Just go to the bottom and click save. But hopefully you have an energy model so that we can get a little bit more accurate savings. And then I'm also going to expand whether you have energy by fuel source. So a few years ago, we added the ability to report by fuel sources, which means you can tell how much electricity versus gas is used so that we can directly calculate the carbon emissions for the project here. So then you're going to take those results from the energy model, how much electricity is used, plug it in here, and then your actual project EUI and carbon emissions will be calculated. If you're doing an interiors project, scroll down, click, you have a lighting power density. You can get that from your comm checks pretty easily, input that here. Now, I will say there is no code equivalent reporting for interiors projects. So if lighting's not in the scope of your project, then it's not eligible for reporting. But if you do have new lighting, then you should be able to talk to your electrical engineers or find it on a comm check to input here. And then once again, that'll be based on the code lighting power density savings. This is what it looks like. Now your data is updated, tells you what your percent savings on that baseline is, and shows what the operational carbon emissions is and carbon intensity. So great metrics automatically calculated for you. Not a whole lot of work there. I do want to point out that you've got questions, you're going to run into stuff. There is support online through the AIA Confluence at aia.org. Well, you can see it down here, and it'll be provided in the slides. So there's a lot of good help pages there as you run into, as well as you can send emails to the AIA 2030 commitment and get answers. All right.
Great. Thanks, Corey. Yeah, so we'll get into the case studies. We've selected a wide range of folks here from different firm sizes, so anywhere from small representatives, medium, large. So they're all going to share their experience in a case study or two. So Corey's going to kick it off, but when it's your turn, if everyone wants to introduce themselves and give a little background, that would be great.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kate. So back to me. I neglected to introduce myself before. I am Corey Duggan. I work with TLC Engineering Solutions. We are a full service MEP consulting firm with about 30 offices and about 500 people across the United States. Like I said, we have been involved in the 2030 commitment for this will be our 14th year reporting. And I also serve with Kate on the AIA National 2030 Commitment Working Group, as well as I'm part of MEP 2040, and I'm the MEP 2040 liaison to the AIA 2030 Working Group. So try to kind of carry that knowledge back and forth, and help support here. But I wanted to talk a little bit about a project that we had done in Texas that was an energy modeling project here that was kind of interesting, but also has some interesting challenges from a 2030 reporting standpoint. So this is a renovation and addition of 3 buildings for SMU. So 157,000 square feet of existing buildings that then really they were all the addition is the connection in the corners between them, right? So about 50,000 square feet of addition. Each of these buildings had different existing thermal envelopes that we really had to pay attention to and look at those existing conditions and what their relative performances were and incorporate those into our energy model with the intent here to design for LEED version 4 silver certification for the project. We worked with the owner to go through a bunch of different scenarios and systems, and we couldn't ultimately change the envelope of the existing buildings, but we did look to optimize the for the new parts to do what we could, as well as connecting it to a high performance central plant. Um, so with that, whenever we went to go and report it for 2030, um, I use the ability here to be able to split the existing part from the new part. So I could kind of keep track of that in here. As well as, I went through to look to see, okay, is there a different building type that I should be using for the existing versus the new? Is that gonna, like, trying to figure out what the right baseline would be for this building? Because obviously, the existing pieces that, we couldn't modify the performance of the envelope. Obviously, it was getting new HVAC and new lighting, but it was a little different. Some limitations there, um, and so I ultimately ended up using the college university campus for both of them. But that is something if you have multiple types in there, or say you've got a building with a small data center, you might want to consider breaking that out to get a more accurate baseline. Uh, but then when I did that, my results were not so good. So I was like, this might be something that you could run into. You go in, you think, and you put in all your data, and you're like, oh, well, I can't report this. This is negative savings. This isn't good. I'm supposed to be showing something better. And we knew that we were doing better because our model for lead was showing, that we were doing, I believe, 16% energy cost savings better. So we knew we were making improvements, but clearly the baseline here wasn't reflecting sort of that existing building well. So we went in to go look and see, okay, well, what should we use? So looking here at our lead results, like I said, you can see that we're making significant savings in lighting, cooling, and again, from an embodied carbon standpoint, we're renovating these existing buildings instead of tearing down and building new ones. So an immediate savings from an embodied carbon standpoint. But because of that, there were limited opportunities for some operational savings. But at the end of the day, any operational savings that we did was a plus, right? Because these buildings were already operating. So we're really reducing sort of that operational overhead. Um, so in this case, we went because we had a lead baseline energy model. And like I mentioned, we created a custom baseline. So when you set your baseline in the DDX, like I ran through just a few minutes ago, instead of using zero tool, you can go and do a custom one. And so in this case, you can see we put in that our baseline is from 90.1, 2010 appendix G, which if you think about it is really a more aggressive baseline than what the 2030 baseline should be because it's set at the 2003 CBEX. And that baseline is also modeling those existing building conditions. So that's really more reflective. And I know there are certain building types that we've talked about before that the default baseline is just not great. And so that's something to keep in mind that you can adjust that to better reflect your project and its performance. And so you can see here our savings and our carbon emissions for this project. So like I said, it's not the most glorious project from deep operational savings, but from an overall emissions reduction and not building a new building, I think that really was a huge success. Um, I wanted to point out that, this isn't a project that we were the engineer of record for. And so in those times, we don't report it as part of our portfolio, but we do provide it to others or to our architectural partners. And so there's a great feature in the DEX that can really reduce the effort and overhead for y'all in by adding collaborators. So if you've got an engineer that's doing an energy model or an energy modeling consultant on your project, instead of going back and forth and asking them to email you the results and trying to find the right information, just go and invite them to be a collaborator on your project. So down on your project page, you can go here and hit add collaborator and then choose their company, and that'll automatically add their company person so they can go and report it for you. So that's that's a great way, and it shows up for both firms. So I'm going to turn it over to Annika now to talk about her case study.
Thanks, Corey. All right. Okay, so I'm Annika Lantrino with HOK. I do sit in our Washington, D.C. office, but I was born and raised in Houston, Texas, so native Texan. I'm really thrilled to be able to share some of our experience optimizing this process to improve portfolio performance across the firm. We did sign on in 2010, and we've been tracking every year since 2011. I think a couple of really important things to note here. When we first started, we compared ourselves to the AIA average, and we were not meeting it. And that was a really great motivator across our leadership at the firm. Like we have to at least be better than the AIA average. You know, we are committed to sustainability. It's part of our DNA. And so we started out to create incremental targets rather than looking at the 60, 70, 80, 90 sort of tall stairs on that staircase that look a little bit more daunting. And so it just started, we're going to hit 40% this year. We're going to do 5% better the next year, 5% better, 5% better. I joke about how every good architect puts a landing in their staircase. We have had periods where we stall out a little bit. Our progress sort of plateaus, and I think that's normal. I do think it's important to keep going and learn from the projects that are in your portfolio that are doing well and continue to push every single year. The number one, I would say, factor in doing this successfully is consistency. Everyone across our firm knows to expect this every single year. They know it's going to be collected. They know they need to set targets. They know that it's going to be reported out to the board of directors every spring. And that really helps us continue to make progress across the firm. I noticed some of the attendees do come from multi-office firms. We have regional business units, and within those, we even have multiple offices that might belong to a region. We check these numbers. We do track not just at the firm level, but region by region and even office by office. This is part of the data that's presented to the board, and it's not to be punitive. It's really to highlight where we may need more resources or training. And I'll call out Texas, which is comprised of 3 different offices, kind of a small, medium, and large profile. Texas always reports great numbers. They're always at the top of the pack firm-wide. But we did, when we looked office by office one year, found that one of the offices in our Texas region wasn't performing as well. And it was masked by the outsized performance in other locations. So we made sure to send resources to that office the following year, or later that year, for training, to do early modeling, to engage with consultants, to understand the DDX better. And so that really helped them pull up their performance. So we don't want to leave any office behind or any professional behind. We want to make sure everyone gets a chance to participate in elevating the performance of the portfolio. We also track top projects across the firm because I think it's really important to see where they're coming from, which offices are working on them, as well as which market sector is working on them. And we're always really proud of the fact that our top performing projects cross all of the market sectors. We have top performers in healthcare, in science and technology, in sport, rec, entertainment. These are often very challenging project types to do well in. And so it's helpful for people to see someone somewhere in the firm has done that very well, and then to cross pollinate that information. What worked in that process? What technologies are you using? What consultants are you using? It really helps raise the performance again across that portfolio. And you can see here not only market sector diversity, but geographic diversity as well. And that's really how across the firm we're lifting each other up as we go year over year. Just a couple of projects I'll share here. We are now tracking DDX is asking for fuel source, not just energy use intensity. And that's really helpful as we really pivot to a focus on carbon and emissions and not just energy performance. And so the more we do that, the better handle we have on the emissions impact that we have every year. Our portfolio that we reported in 24, those projects will reduce over 1 million tons of carbon every year they're in service, or over 60 million in their service life. So that's really impactful, and I think that helps keep the momentum going. But here's a couple of our net zero or very high performing projects in science and technology. And this project has a large data center on site because it is a computation hall. An airport, again, high ventilation rates, air change rates, high patterns of folks going through a facility like this. And then a hospital, a healthcare, again, big plug loads, and also high ventilation rates here as well. So it's really helpful to show that these numbers can be achieved and showcase that this also can translate to good design, that it's not just numbers, but it's also performance. Another area where we've tried to tackle is we started trending, taking a look at how our top largest projects were performing, and that was about 6-7 years ago. And we noticed our larger projects were weighting down the firm average. And so we felt like, if we can't tackle all of these projects with the same level of investment and performance, the least we can do is tackle the largest ones. In 24, 31 of 148 projects comprised 2/3 of the gross square footage we reported. If that gives you a sense, those big projects really move the needle. You can see about 3 years ago when those large projects started pulling the firm-wide average up rather than weighing it down. So if you can't do iterative energy modeling on all your projects, if you can't invest all the resources in all the projects, at least do it on the largest that has the biggest impact on emissions reduction on the whole from your portfolio. Other best practices, I mentioned consistency and incremental targets. Leadership accountability, our senior-most leaders are held accountable for their performance in their studios every year. And again, this is shared back at the board of directors meetings as well as core board meetings. The market sector and region-based engagement, really looking every year forensically at who's struggling and who needs more help. That large project emphasis. We have a minimum 40-hour rule. We picked a fee threshold and said every project over this fee threshold must set aside 40 hours to do the basics: climate analysis, target setting, collecting that data at the end of each design phase, and reporting it back through the DDX, and then the basics in terms of passive design and load reduction. We expect people to track their projects throughout the year based on their own project schedules, but we do have a mid-year gut check to see how the firm's doing and see if we need to address any issues or challenges with specific projects or studios. We also have policies to do an LCA on all whole building projects over 5,000 square feet and 100% energy modeling on all whole building projects, period. And I'm going to talk just briefly about what I think is one of the most important aspects of success here, and it's the value we get from energy modeling. We did a study a few years ago. We found that when we invested in an energy model, the cost of that model was paid for in 1 to 3 months of operational savings in the building. It made it a lot easier to sell energy modeling to our clients when we could point to this and say the payback is virtually instantaneous. This was published on the Department of Energy's website, still posted if anybody cares to check that out. TLC actually, when they read that, joined us and dumped a bunch of their projects in that same process. And we found the same results across both our portfolios, working with different engineers, different architects. Very small projects, sometimes a little bit more challenging to pay back that quickly, but still worth the effort. We aligned our modeling process and expectations with the ASHRAE 209 standard. If you haven't checked it out, it's really useful. This is something that we've worked into our sub-consultant agreements, where we have a list of all of the energy modeling cycles that appear in the 209 standard, and we can check off which ones we want for each project. So it's really clear what's a basic service and what's an additional service. We do energy modeling in-house some of the time, but a lot of the time we are working with external consultants, and we want the same level of iterative analysis throughout to support our design process. We've also created some graphics to visualize what steps of modeling we want and when, and how that also correlates to commissioning, which is in the later code cycles, energy code cycles, we see not just the MEP commissioning, but also the enclosure commissioning. And this helps us integrate energy modeling and commissioning in those peer reviews of our design sets early in design and throughout design and delivery. Two of my favorite cycles from 209 are load reduction modeling and simulation aided value engineering. So I'll just do really brief case studies. Load reduction modeling is super important. This can protect some of your architectural design decisions. It also can result in immediate payback and construction cost savings when you can right size the tons of cooling you need, the BTUs of heating you need, and the equipment that serves this facility. So this is really important. I think it's a mandatory in the 209 standard, but really important to designers. So this case study is a project we're working on down in Miami. This is Climate Zone 1. And you can see in concept, we had an enclosure, very high window wall ratio. They're right on the water. They wanted those views. And so we started pulling out deeper and deeper terraces to help protect those window walls. You can see here in the next phase of design to protect those windows from direct radiation. At some point, our client said, maybe I don't want deep terraces. Maybe I think it blocks my view. What if we got rid of them? And we were able to say, using energy modeling, both for load reduction and whole building energy performance, if you do that, you're either going down to a 50% window wall ratio, and you're getting strip windows, or we're doing a whole lot of other improvements to the envelope to counter that. The annual energy was not significant in terms of the different design iterations, but as soon as we looked at the peak loads and we looked at peak cooling, when we got rid of those terraces and those deep extensions, the central energy plant, the chillers, everything jumped up 13%. You know, the space needed for mechanical closets on every floor jumped up. The added costs from removing those terraces was significant, and the client said, never mind, we're keeping them, keeping the ledge extensions, and we're going forward. The envelope's approved. So this was really helpful to preserving the architecture of the project. The other cycle that I'll show is simulation aided value engineering. This is a 500,000 square foot building in Washington, D.C. When we were in DD, this project, the mechanical package was over budget, and I was concerned we were going to lose the efficient systems that we had selected. And we actually, our engineer was the one who proposed and said, hear me out, we're at 56 window wall ratio. We could just go down to 51% vision glazing, choose slightly better glass. It's a little bit more expensive, but we're going to use less of it. And we're right on the edge, and we could get rid of a chiller. And this ended up saving money immediately in construction costs, and it reduced our PEUI from 32 to 28 kBtu per square foot per year. So this is actual value engineering rather than just cost engineering. So just in summary, model early, model often, knowledge is power. We don't design in a data vacuum when it comes to our structure, our wind loads on the exterior of our building, anywhere else. Really important that we continue to add energy and emissions feedback throughout the design process. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Stein with Lake Plato. I'm excited to share how we support AIA 2030. At the beginning of the year, I just wrapped up a 3-year appointment to the AIA Committee on the Environment Leadership Group. About 50% of Lake Plato's work is national. As Corey mentioned, one of the first things you do with the 2030 commitment is create a sustainability action plan. We call ours the Design Performance Action Plan, and our commitment to the 2030 challenge is memorialized within this document. We're working on our 16th year. You don't get the new badge until after you've submitted, so I have our 15-year badge on the screen there. We have been members or signatories since the program's inception. We have a number of strategies and workflows in place to help us be consistent and get high quality outcomes. So here's a strategy of modeling early and often, as Annika just said, to make sure that we're making decisions early on when things can still be modified and have impact. Here's a process for energy modeling. We have another one for operational carbon. This is on our intranet site, so everybody in the firm has access to this. We have a nice messy spreadsheet. This is our current one with obviously important information kind of blurred out, but we track all of our projects and we report every project that has conditioned square footage. We have a 5-person design performance team that myself and Kate are on, and I saw Miguel, our design technologist, is on the call as an attendee. Kate, as our design performance manager, meets regularly with the studio champions. Each project has a sustainability champion person designated on the team. I like to show faces and keep the human aspect in these presentations. So here's our actual sustainability champions for each studio. It's clearly not just one person for each studio. It's a team effort. I have 2 Texas-based projects. The second one, or case studies, the second one I'm going to go through really quickly just for sake of time, but I want to emphasize that if you have and use Autodesk Revit, you have the ability to do this important energy modeling exercise with pretty accurate results, I would add, for free. I mean, you're paying Autodesk a lot of money if you use Revit, but for no additional money, you can use this pretty good workflow that uses Energy Plus. So a typical scenario is there's 3 designs, not just for the sake of energy modeling, but we're going to layer onto that what the predictive EUI is, the predictive energy use intensity, the PEUI, with the goal of, when it comes to energy modeling, not just to do it to report to 2030, but to understand the regional climate considerations and passive strategies. So the differences in the passive strategies for these 3 designs is going to be really accurate, even though we're doing this as architects and not as Corey, as a mechanical engineer who has more knowledge and more capable tools. So here's option one that we'll look at just briefly. And in Revit, there's a series of things that you can do before you push it to the cloud, which is where Autodesk Insight does its magic. So you have the geometry, and layered onto that is the appropriate, what's called perimeter and core thermal zoning that's required by ASHRAE. I forget the number now, but the weather file, so Texas or anywhere in the world location, true north defined using Revit's typical tool to do that. The envelope settings, so the effective R value and thermal mass values, and then the internal loads. The big ones can be set in Revit, the light power density, the heating, cooling set points, and the schedule. And then on the left here, once you push that to the cloud, this is what the interface looks like. There is an embodied carbon component that uses the Building Transparency EC3 database that we won't be talking about any more than what I just said there. And then on the right is some specific HVAC and light power density, and then there's other widgets they're called you can add to further refine the inputs once you've gotten to the cloud. So you can change the window to wall ratio without changing the model and see what the results are for the east side of the building or the west side, maybe more appropriately. And then you can see the load breakdowns. Finally, related to this Revit and Insight workflow is once you have some data, Insight supports pushing the results directly to the AIA DDX. I just set this, you saw that Corey mentioned design energy code, and you can see the same thing there. I set it to Massachusetts stretch code just so you can see that this was, there's lots of options in there in addition to ASHRAE 90.1, which was one of the examples he showed. Also in Revit, you can do this so PV potential. So this is a tool in Revit directly. You can edit the PV efficiency and also the area. So it's usually not 100% of the roof. It's a lesser area so that you can access the panels and maintain them in the facility itself. Then you run a calculation and you can see in these darker areas, there's non-optimal places to put panels like the low roof to higher roof areas self-shading, and then adjacent to the tall trees or maybe some adjacent building. It helps you understand how you can offset the predictive EUI with renewable energy and also some things about your building that you could change the building design to get better results. And then in our intranet, we also have this example of a small, same project, same orientation, 4 Texas cities, looking at the differences. I don't really have time to go into the second one. I want to save enough time for Beth and the Q&A, but there's another option within Revit called Systems Analysis that uses Open Studio, and you can get really specific on the envelope and the internal loads, and you get this full Open Studio report. And then finally, if you're interested, Autodesk actually commissioned me to create this course that's on their website, Design Performance and Sustainability with Autodesk Forma, Revit, and Insight. So 2/3 of it are on Forma and 1/3 of it is on what I just talked about. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. My name is Beth Brandt, and I am a principal at DSGN. We are a firm of 11 people in Dallas, where this is our only firm. So you've kind of got the full spectrum today, as Kate said. We went from hundreds of thousands of people in a firm worldwide to a single office of 11. So I'm kind of going to go through 2 quick case studies with you today just to show that even a small firm can do this. So again, my name is Beth Brand. I've been super involved with COAT for a very long time. Most recently, I was chair of the COAT network, where we meet with the other COAT leaders around the United States quarterly, and we network and we share ideas and we learn from each other. And then as of this year, I'm part of the COAT leadership group at the national level. And as a firm, we adopted the 2030, or we accepted the 2030 challenge early on, before I was actually at DSGN in like 2008 or something. And then when I came on in 2013, we accepted the 2030 commitment and we did a sustainable action plan, which is currently being updated, much needed updates. And then we've been reporting basically that entire time back when it was still like an Excel spreadsheet. So I don't know how you guys got your updated numbers, but mine's been from since DDX. So we've been reporting on the DDX for 10 years. And I'll talk a little bit about our process and what we've been doing. But the first case study I wanted to go through was just using ComCheck. So I know a lot of the times our small projects, we don't have big fees that nobody's going to pay us to do a full-on energy model. So I just wanted to show that you can still report even if you're not doing energy modeling, and there is value in that. And this is a project that is in the Historic Conservation District in Oak Cliff. And it's one of those missing middle types of projects where we have a single stair 15-unit apartment complex. It's a little less than 10,000 square feet. Oops. I'm going to go to the next slide. Hold on. Yes. Okay, so as Corey was saying, basically you go to the DDX, you fill out all the basic information. It's stuff that you already know. And then you can start doing a comm check early on. You don't have to wait till the very end. But whatever phase your firm decides to do, what you would do just to do one up above that is you take your window to wall ratio percentage from the comm check and you add it into this additional inputs information. Of course, you make sure you have the right building type, which in this case is a multifamily, and 9,500 square feet. And then from there, it automatically gives you a little bit better than your baseline. So it's not a lot, but just looking at your window wall ratio can make a difference. That's the first one I wanted to show you. The second one is we've been using Sapphira. So our office uses ArchiCAD. We do some work internationally. About 50% or more of our work, we're more the design architects. So we don't get into what kind of mechanical systems or lighting or anything like that. So for our local work, we really try to spend time to do this more analysis. So our firm, I've tried to do it different ways. I used to do all of it myself as far as reporting. I used to do all of it myself. That is fine because it's only about, it varies, but it's maybe 20 projects at most a year, and maybe 5 to 10 of those are new projects. The rest are just kind of updating where we were from last year. But then I tried delegating out to all the project architects and managers in the office, which was 5 or 6 people. That didn't really work so well, so I pulled it back. And so now we have 3 people on our green team, and we as a team have committed to do at least 5 in-house energy models a year. And we already design in SketchUp a lot, so Sapphira was a good easy plugin that we could add to our SketchUp model. So we have 1 license of Sapphira in our office. And I used to do all the energy modeling, but now I've empowered another woman in our office and she does all that. And like I said, we do around average, as far as our qualifying projects, which would be major renovations or new constructions locally where we have influence over mechanical, lighting, all of those things. That's around 5 to 10 projects a year. So we've committed to doing at least 5 in-house energy models each year. And this is kind of a project that I wanted to show you. It is in West Dallas in a pretty, I would say, diverse neighborhood. And it is going to have, it just opened actually. It's 15 units as well, about an 80% AMI for affordable housing. And the first floor, there's 3 units and they're reserved for seniors. And they received some NOFA funding pretty late in the game. So that was allowed us to add some solar panels to the roof. But what you do is you take your SketchUp model and you can get the Sapphire the Sapphire plug-in, and you kind of just, I took this beautiful SketchUp model and I just dumbed it down, right? And it'll take a guess as to what they think is a wall. And so you just want to let it guess. It's faster that way. And then you can go around and fix anything that they got wrong. So we added these, porch is shading. We have operable windows, fixed windows, that kind of thing. And then you can, from here, there's little toggles, and you can increase your R value and your U values for the windows and the roof. So that is kind of the first pass, and it doesn't really take that long. I encourage you to use it early on, like experiment with different things. It's really overall, I kind of got ahead of myself, but it's really over a 4-step process. So the first thing you do is you go to Zero Tool, you establish what your baseline is going to be based on the square footage, averages square footage, what your building type is. Once you know that, that will help. And of course, DDX will help you establish that as well. Then you're going to run that energy modeling, like I was saying. And once you have that kind of baseline SketchUp version from while you're in SketchUp with Sapphire, you can upload it to their Sapphire platform. And from there, you can tweak things. You can go in and get more precise about the HVAC, what kind of HVAC you have, the zones of that. You can put in your lighting power density. You can even add solar to these things. You can refine the orientation. I should say, when you're in SketchUp, make sure that you're actually in true north so that it's measuring things correctly. But if you can also play with this orientation while you're in the platform, you know, how much better would it be if I tweaked it here or there? So, and then actually from here, you can, and this is my favorite part, you can upload your model straight into the DDX. So you don't even have to, you know, copy and paste those numbers over. It automatically loads to the DDX. So with this project, we had a baseline of 41.3 EUI. It was designed, we played with kind of just doing a little bit better than code as far as our energy envelope and windows and that kind of thing. And doing that got us down to a 23.1 predicted energy use intensity. And with the solar that came on pretty late, we were able to get that down to 15.9. And you can see here that Sapphire doesn't have that as an option, but what we do instead is we work with the solar providers or the solar manufacturers. They're going to give us this information for free anyway, because they want to sell solar panels to be installed on your roof. So I just say, hey, this is our roof. Can you do a quick prediction? And that's kind of where we were. So I'm gonna stop sharing and get it back to Kate.
Great. Thank you so much. This was really eye-opening and inspiring to see how you all approach your 2030 reporting, energy modeling. We can open it to Q&A. I guess I do want to emphasize with 2030 reporting, like a lot of folks said, I mean, it's okay even if you're just doing code compliant buildings. I think the importance of 2030 reporting is that we're being transparent about what every firm is doing. I think just as an industry, we want to know where we're heading and making sure that we've got that, you know, average PEUI across the country or globally reported. So even if you only spend 10 minutes just reporting your project as code, that is totally A-okay. And then maybe going through this process inspires you to try an energy model on a project. I really liked what Annika said about like identify what your top project is, like the biggest square footage. That's something I haven't considered. And maybe that's the one that, you know, if you have to do it in-house in practice, you try on that one instead. So
yeah, I'll just add to that, because with the year that we were, you know, we've done 3 or 4 lead projects as a firm going for platinum. And the years that we do that, we have one project that was fully energy modeled with the MEP engineer, and it just makes your firm look amazing because we just did the one. So it has a huge effect.
So does anyone want to post some questions? I think you can unmute yourself too, or we've got some things we could pull out from the comments. Caitlin says participants are able to unmute. So if you want to ask, feel free. I think I'll read some things from the comments.
Can I share one thing really quick, Kate?
Yes.
I was trying to unmute and I was fumbling. So one of the things we mentioned is that a sustainability action plan is required to be a signatory. And so where do you start with that? One great option is to look at all the other firms' SAPs, and the AIA has this great Dropbox repository that I just put a link in the chat, and you can go download everybody's and basically take what you like out of each of those and make your own.
Thanks, Dan.
I have a quick question. Can I ask a question?
Please.
I'm Peter. Dan, nice to see you. I'm Peter Nobley with Bergmeyer in Boston. My question is this: so we've historically only reported LPD because we do the vast majority of our work is interior renovation work. Is there a way to see? I understand you can just put in a baseline EUI, just let the DDX calculate it. Is there a way to see both LPD and EUI results in the same DDX on the page? It doesn't look like, yeah, it looks like it's sort of either or. Do you know what I'm saying?
So you can definitely, when you get to a summary of your firm's portfolio, you can see the LPD reduction and the EUI reduction from all projects rolled up. If you're entering whole building data for a single project, the LPD is inherent in that. So it's not a separate line item, but your energy model report would have a line within it that says your LPD is 20% better than the code, or
Okay, so I have to look at
you.
the summary. Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
it's just
you.
a summary of your portfolio performance.
Okay, that was the
Yeah.
question. Thank you.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that the LPD. So we can look at the top performers, and one of them on mine was the Longhorn Ballroom, which we didn't change the envelope at all. It was only the lighting, and that pops up at the top.
Okay, thank you very much.
One tip I'll give on LPD, your code has allowances or exceptions for decorative lighting. And so, but you don't get those same allowances in
Yeah,
2030. So
take
projects
those
that,
exemptions out, right?
yeah, so that can be
Yeah.
challenging, tricky, especially around certain project types. Hospitality is always one that
Retail.
trips us up. Yeah, retail. So something to make sure to educate and communicate with your folks who do lighting design
Yeah.
or coordinate with your designers.
Well, I think like Beth, like just one person, me, ends up doing a lot of the calculations
Yeah.
just because it's harder to explain it to people,
Yeah.
but that's okay. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Corey, do you have that link available that you showed just if people want to see that full resource list of how to do 2030 reporting?
Grab that.
We can drop it in the chat.
Yeah, that was a nice summary, Corey. Thank you.
Curious to know if anybody's done any post-occupancy of energy modeling where what the predicted energy use would be, and then if they've, based off usage of the building, if it's even come close to what they predicted.
So there are certain jurisdictions around the country that already